So, imposter syndrome. It might be something you've heard of, might not be.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard of it when I first started pursuing art, and then after I learned about what imposter syndrome was, I realized that I
think I actually told you about imposter syndrome.
You might have. And then when I did some research and read about it and then started writing this book chapter about it, I realized, wow, I've always suffered from this. So, and it's not unusual.
Yeah.
So, if you fit this definition, you're not alone.
You're not alone.
It's actually very common among high achievers in any industry, whether it's corporate industry or you're a doctor or an artist or whatever the case might be.
But especially artists.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I think we're the worst.
Yeah. So if you don't know what it is, Grace? Tell them what imposter syndrome is.
All right. Well, I am actually going to read a definition from Wikipedia here. So I'm going to look down and read this. Wikipedia defines imposter syndrome as a concept describing individuals who are marked by an inability to internalize their accomplishments and have a persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud. So basically, if you kind of feel like a failure, no matter how good you actually are. Let's go over maybe some of the symptoms, as it were. I mean, this makes it sound like it's a horrible disease, which it's not.
It's not. It's more. It's emotional.
It's an internal thing, and it's not even It's not even like a mental illness. We're not talking about.
You can't take a pill for it.
No, you can't take a pill for it.
But you can work on it mentally, which is why we're bringing it up.
But it's I don't even want to say condition. That doesn't sound right either. But
I think it's like a mental stigma that you deal with.
Yeah.
It's something that mentally you kind of have this blockage, this wall, and it's something that keeps you from being your best, and that's why we want to talk about it.
That's very true. Let's see, a lot of the traits, sorry, I'm reading here just so I can cover some of these and word it properly, but if you might have trouble accepting compliments on your work. I know that's something I've really been working on, and now I feel like I can finally receive a genuine compliment. But when someone genuinely says, wow, I really love your song, I really love your book, I really love your painting, if you have trouble accepting it, not just accepting a compliment with grace, but you have trouble believing that they're genuine in their appreciation of it.
Oh yeah, and you can tell somebody when they don't believe you. You say, oh man, I really enjoyed that piece of art that you made. Oh, well, just say thank you. It's okay. You know what I mean? And you can tell someone that deals with it versus someone who doesn't. So yeah.
And you can also usually tell someone who's complimenting you just to pat you on the back or saying, wow, love that thing you did. You can usually tell a genuine compliment, but you have trouble receiving genuine compliments. You feel like everyone else in your industry has it all together, or is better than you, or is not just better than you, but kind of has it all together, knows what they're doing. You feel like you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, and that they're going to figure it out, that others will figure it out.
You feel like you're always you're always working on hiding a big obvious flaw.
Right, yeah.
It's you often feel that way.
That so many artists, like for example, I see a lot of models that deal with that. They're like, I just know that people are going to figure out that I'm actually not beautiful. Because they wear so much makeup and have to really figure out poses, and really they study that with all of their life, and then they just have this dread about them. I read it with this famous actress, I'll leave her unnamed, but she just has this fear. She's at the top of the charts, but she admitted in this article that she feels as if she is going to get found out, that she's really not as good as people think she is. So... And it's funny because we all have flaws. We're humans. So I feel like we all know that deep down inside. But at the end of the day, you might feel as if you don't have the freedom to express your true, authentic humility and humanity. And that's a problem. I think you got to feel that freedom. Go ahead with more symptoms.
Yeah. Perfectionism can sometimes be a symptom of imposter syndrome. You feel like if you don't get it absolutely perfect, especially on the first try, then, it's either perfect or nothing. And that's not the case.
Yeah, it's not the case.
It's not the case. It's like it needs to be either perfect or nothing. I mean, maybe there's a few industries where it's got to be perfect the first time. I'm thinking like perhaps brain surgery. But
you need
where it needs to be, it really kind of needs to be perfect the first time if you're doing something like that. But... So I'm not belittling people who might be in an industry where you genuinely need to get it perfect the first time.
But for
most creatives, it's like you're writing a book, you're doing a song, you're pursuing a modeling career, you're working on your acting, you're a graphic designer, whatever your videographer, whatever your creative industry might be, you feel like you have to get it perfect on the first try. It's like, no, you don't have to get it perfect on the first try. You don't have to get it perfect on the 10th try.
Well, and it's
First of
deception
all,
to think that there's perfection anywhere.
That's
Like even
very
in
true.
brain surgery, there's no perfection. That's why it's going on in the first place. And then why there's like a lot of like, we have to do a second surgery and a third surgery because there's no just like this perfect moment that happens. It's not real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and if you think there is, that's because in your mind that's perfect, but in Grace's mind or my mind, it might not be perfect. So then all of a sudden you have different perspectives and perceptions of perfect.
That's true. Whose definition of perfect are you trying to live up to? Are you
Right.
trying to live up to your own definition, someone else's definition, an arbitrary definition that no one has actually really defined? You've just sort of decided in your own mind that when I reach this level or when I accomplish this, it will be perfect, and it's doesn't match up, therefore I'm not perfect. So that's another assumption, believing that everything needs to be perfect. So perfectionism can actually be very harmful and it can stall you and stop you from working, feeling if it's not perfect, I shouldn't even try. That can really just
Right.
that can really halt you in your tracks and stall any kind of growth and development.
Yeah, and one of our mottos here at Helps Too is that we want to do so much of something that we can actually get to a place to where it is high quality and everything we're doing is high quality. But we also understand that there's a process that you must go through. You start off, and if you look at our first videos on our YouTube channel, I'm so embarrassed, but we keep them up there so that we can show others like, hey, we've gone through a process. And we didn't just end up where we're at right now by snapping our fingers and believing the best. And we didn't have millions of dollars, at first. We actually, and we don't right now either. So if you want to donate, that's fine. I'm just kidding. But maybe one day soon, you know what I mean? I'm believing that. But we started at this place where it was super organic. We didn't have all the knowledge. We didn't have everything figured out. And that's okay. It's okay.
Absolutely. It's okay. So some of the things, if you think you might suffer from imposter syndrome, some of the ways that you can kind of overcome that, first of all, you had kind of mentioned something that made me think of this, seeing the end result of someone else doing something, and I've heard it phrased this way, you compare your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel.
Yeah.
And that is...
It's common nowadays.
It's very common for all of us in all industries to really do that, but that's really a mistake, and that really can, stall your growth because you're seeing someone's finished product, and then you look at your messy process, and you're like, mine's not as. That's where the perfection thing can kind of come in.
Right.
You see someone's polished, finished product, but you don't see the hours they put into it, and the money they put into it, and the 100 times they recorded that video and then edited that video to make it look good and then polish it up, and you record your raw stuff and you're like, wow, this is terrible. It's like, well, theirs was probably just as good as your original footage, and then you need to polish it up. So yeah, comparing your behind the scenes process to someone else's highlight reel.
Right, and that's just not fair. And I'll be honest, as a musician, when I record a song, the actual recordings can sometimes be so rough. But I'm in a place now, I think I've recorded, I'm not even joking, like about 75 songs, like professionally. And so I always get to hear the raw in the studio. I hear the raw, and sometimes I'm like, man, that sounds horrible. It sounds so bad. And then I sit down with my producer and we put a filter on something, or we re-sing something, or we add a harmony or an instrument, and then all of a sudden we have this knowledge, and there's more than one of us. It's not just me sitting there, but then I come out with this song and nobody sees the behind the scenes process. And then it's like this polished and perfected, that's just not even a concept to me, but people think it's perfected thing. And they're like, man, you're such a good singer. But I've seen singers in the studio where they literally do a pitch bend. You know what I mean? I've had my producer say, hey, let me just pitch bend this, which is, you have this DAW system. It's a program on the computer where you sing into it. You see your vocal waves. They literally, if you hit a note wrong, they take the program and you can just bend the pitch to where it's right. And because pitches are all math in a computer system anyways, when you think about it. If you know music, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not crazy. But yeah, so that's the reality of it. You can have someone pitch bending for you, but because some of us artists aren't there yet or don't have someone pitch bending, I don't think you should necessarily have someone pitch bending. There are followers out there that don't want to hear your stuff pitch bended. You know what I mean?
That's true too. And with me as a writer, it's like I read some awesome, New York Times bestseller, and then I compare the novel I just finished the first draft of to that, and I'm like, oh, there's no way this is ever going to compare. It's like, well, not right now, no, because I just finished a first draft, and that New York Times bestseller, that might have been a 17th draft.
That's true.
So it's like,
Gone
I
through
didn't see-
5 publishers or 5
yeah,
editors.
you haven't seen the process.
Yeah.
You haven't seen the process.
So enjoy the process. I think at the end of the day, right, if we could leave them with anything, I would say enjoy the process. It's the funnest part, because if you just get to your end destination, well, I mean, what's next? Like, you kind of have this, like, and that's a whole nother chapter, but you have this feeling of, man, I was so determined to get somewhere and to look like somebody else, or like
don't
the
compare.
template.
That's really it. It's like, don't compare yourself to anybody else, or anybody else's product, or anybody else's journey.
Right.
Because your journey is your own, and so you don't need to feel like a fraud at all, because you're not.
Yeah. And someone somewhere is interested in your journey, whether you believe it or not, and it's going to change someone's life.